he could curse God. He could say, "Bohu, woe is me! Look at I'm in this horrible situation," which is natural. But because he has covenanted and he's constantly renewing this covenant relationship and this covenant confidence that he has with God, that he is with him, he will strive and he's willing to keep his commandments wherever he is and under any circumstances.
Welcome to the Gathering of Tribes weekly discussion of the Come Follow Me lesson. I'm Rachel Krause, and I'm here with Anthony Rivera today. In case you're wondering or feeling sad that my dad, Chuck K, is not with us today, don't worry. He will be back next week. We gave him a night off, so I just want to also thank everybody who came and saw us at Roots Tech. We had a booth there. So many people asked me where my dad was. So I'm glad to know that you're watching and that you think about us and have concern for us. I'm super grateful for that. It was a really great time, and again, we're just so thankful for all the support that we get. And thank you so much for that. I have a comment I would like to share with everybody today before we get started. This is from Ute White Rocks 2813. I was able to share comments from Gathering of Tribes in Gospel Doctrine class, and that Brother Rivera uses original Hebrew words. One brother who spent years in Jerusalem was excited to watch and study Hebrew again. Thank you for this. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing in your classes the things that you're learning here. I feel like it's really valuable, and I really appreciate people sharing with others that information. So thank you so much for that. We're gonna start with the opening of the Come Follow Me lesson. And the title of the lesson is The Lord Was with Joseph. And that beginning paragraph says, "We know that God blesses people who trust him and keep his commandments. But sometimes it doesn't seem that way. Sometimes the person who trusts God is abused and abandoned by family members. Sometimes the person who bravely refuses to violate the law of chastity gets falsely accused anyway. When things like that happen to us, we might be tempted to become angry with God. We might wonder, what's the point of trying to do the right thing if it only seems to make life harder?" Joseph, the son of Jacob, could have wondered that. At times, this faithful man prospered. At other times, it seemed that the more faithful he was, the more hardship he faced. But Joseph never left the Lord, and the Lord never left Joseph. That doesn't mean the Lord prevented bad things from happening to Joseph, but through it all, the Lord was with him. And I think that that's key. Anthony, share a little bit more about that. We talked a little bit about that,
Yeah.
that phrase that the Lord was with him before we
Yeah.
started.
I'm glad this is the theme of this week's study, Genesis 37 through 41. This really begins the full narrative of Joseph. And and this is the running theme that the Lord Jehovah is going to be with Joseph. Wherever he is, whatever happens, when he is separated from his family and headed down to a foreign land as a slave, the Lord is with him. When he is um, serving in a household that is toxic, if
A
you
little
will,
bit.
a little bit toxic and volatile, the Lord is with him. When he's thrown into prison, falsely accused and thrown into prison, the Lord is with him. In chapter 39 alone of Genesis, it says that three times over and over and over again. This is very important for us to remember as we not only as we study these chapters of Joseph, but that we remember for ourselves as well. that the Lord is with us regardless of the circumstances. But the Lord being with us, as you stated, Rachel, it's important to know that Joseph always remembered that statement that the Lord would be with him always. It reminds me of the covenant that we make every week. This is why it's critical to come to our sacrament services to renew this covenant of keeping the commandments of Jehovah, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and always remember him. That means
Yeah.
keeping him with us. Why? So that his spirit will always be with us. It's the same thing. So we're living out daily. I mean, think about the world that you're in, think about circumstances, think about hardships and stresses and anxieties and all kinds of different prisons sometimes we're placed in. Know that the Lord is with you. Hold on to those covenants, renew them, have joy in the trust and the confidence that the Lord is with you as well. So this is what we can learn as we're moving through these chapters. So there's a lot to cover, and I like to just kind of move through the main parts of these things and stop and look at a couple verses, see if there's any questions or maybe challenging verses as we move along. So, shall we begin and just take a look at a couple things here, Rachel?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, all right. Let me just preface here by saying this. We left off in chapter 33, but I do want to say something about what's happening in chapter 34, 35, and 36. Okay, that we're not going to cover, but that are important. Now, oftentimes people skip these chapters. I don't know why, because they're packed with some very interesting and important teachings. Let me just touch on each one really quick. In chapter 34, this is where we get the account of the only sister of the children of Israel. So we're going to be
Yes.
looking at the development of the family of Israel right now. Remember, Israel is now the patriarch, right? The presiding patriarch, and his four awesome women, his four awesome wives. Remember, Leah is the first wife, Rachel is the second wife, and then you have Zilpah and Bilhah. Okay, these are four wives, and they each have children, and they're ranked just for the culture and for the inheritance pieces. Okay, so we learn that in chapter 34 that Dinah is the daughter. Okay, she's a daughter of Leah. Okay, and she's a young girl. And that whole account is very interesting. It has to do with her name. Her name, Dinah, means justice. Isn't that interesting?
I like that.
Her name is
Yeah.
Justice. And
Yeah.
that whole chapter is about doing justice for her or the way that God balances justice and mercy. And they use her and her name to teach that. In chapter 35, this is an interesting account, another account of Jacob receiving his new name Israel. So there's two accounts. There's the one that we saw last time, and then there's this one in chapter 35. They recount Jacob now receiving his new name by covenant in a temple ceremony, and his name is Yisrael, right? The Prince of God. And then in chapter 36, we get the whole genealogy of Esau.
Yeah.
Now that is interesting. We get the whole family of Esau. And we don't want to forget them. At least in the Bible, they don't. They recount and account for all of them. And so it is important to take a look at chapter 36 about the family of Esau, who is Jacob's brother. Okay. Remember the reunion they had at the end there of chapter
Yeah.
33. Remember that? So we don't want to forget Esau. And we get an account of his whole family, which is quite marvelous in chapter 36, which leads us to chapter 37. And chapter 37, again, is the beginning of Joseph's narrative. So from 37 until chapter 50 is all going to be focused on Joseph or related to Joseph. Okay. It's the longest narrative attributed to one person in the whole book of Genesis than anyone else. You,
Yeah,
isn't
there's a
that
lot of story
interesting?
there and it's great.
It is fantastic, but you would think in a work in a book that covers the creation, Adam and Eve, that covers the garden, that covers the flood, that
Right.
covers Noah, that covers the tower, that covers um, um, Noah's family, that covers Melchizedek, that covers Enoch, that covers Abraham.
Right.
You would think those would be long, long, long chapters, but in the book of Genesis, they're not. The longest chapters are attributed to Joseph. So somebody who's putting together the book of Genesis wants us to know something about Joseph. Okay?
Just think there's so many great things to learn from Joseph. I mean, he went through so many things that we can identify with,
Yeah,
family issues.
that's right.
You know, that's one that almost all of us can relate to.
Yeah.
Um, maybe feeling or being undesired, unworthy,
Hmm. Hmm.
feeling like he's trying so hard to do what's right. And
Yeah.
what does that feel like when you're not seeing the blessings right away of that? That's
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
that I think most of us can relate to.
Right.
Um, there's just so many great things to learn from Joseph and so many
Hmm.
things that I know that I personally feel like I can relate to.
Yeah.
So as much as I love stories about the garden and Adam and Eve and stuff like that, I'm not sure
Hmm.
that going through creation necessarily relates to my everyday life. Is
Hmm.
certainly important. But I appreciate a story that helps me, or that I can relate to in my personal life.
Yeah. And also if by way of patriarchal blessings, which are personal revelations, right, of not only personal revelation for yourself, but also revelation of lineage and connection to this family of Israel, this covenant family of Israel. If it's revealed that you are a lineal descendant of Ephraim or Manasseh, then this is your story. This is your ancestor, right?
Right.
These are the sons of Joseph that we'll see at the very end in chapter 41. But this is the story of the family of not only Israel, but primarily the ancestor Joseph. We're going to get in the next chapter 38 a glimpse and a comparison to the other brother, Judah, and we're going to have a look at that as well. So let me just give you a preface here about Joseph. In Hebrew, his name is Yosef. Yosef. In English, we say Joseph. We put the accent on the first syllable. In Hebrew,
Hmm.
you put it on the second syllable. Yosef is his name. And remember, his mother is Rachel, and Joseph is the firstborn son of Rachel, but she's the second wife. The firstborn son of the first wife is Reuben, and Reuben is the oldest of all the brothers, right? Joseph is a firstborn son of the second wife. He just happens to be one of the youngest. And it's interesting
Right.
that the Lord meant it to be that way because
Yeah.
it plays into what's going to happen here. Okay? Because Israel knows that he's a firstborn son. He's a firstborn son of his favorite wife, Rachel, who, by the way, remember, dies. So sad.
Yeah.
She dies giving birth to the last son, Benjamin, who is the youngest one, right? And
Yep.
she dies and is buried in Bethlehem. Isn't that interesting? Rachel is buried
Yes.
in Bethlehem. And so Benjamin, Rachel's second born son, is the youngest of all the brothers. Joseph is the next youngest. Okay. So Rachel's boys are two of the youngest sons in the house of Israel. Okay. So Yosef means she names him Yosef. Rachel does. Rachel names him Yosef, she says, for two reasons. She uses two words that sound the same. Asaph. She says, God has gathered all of my pain and suffering and blessed me with this son. And then she says, and God has increased me. So Yosef means increasing. Isn't that interesting? It's an active participle, which means it's always happening. It's still happening.
I love
Yosef is
that.
increasing.
Continually.
Continually is what it means.
Yeah.
Continually increasing. And remember the word asaph, what that Rachel says also, which means to gather.
Yes.
So the her naming him incorporates into his character and into his mission and into his destiny. And that is to gather, to save, and to increase. So today, if you were to ask, let's say General Conference is coming up soon, and if you were to ask all of the descendants of Joseph, Ephraim, or Manasseh, according to patriarchal blessings, please raise your hand. How many people do you think would raise your hand in there?
Oh, a ton.
Yeah, probably the majority. Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is that just habit? Are the patriarchs just saying, oh, let's just, for the next 20 years, let's just do Ephraim's, right? No, no, that's not it. That's not it. It has to do with the blessings of Joseph. Increasing is his name. Increasing.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does Joseph and his descendants do? They gather, they bless,
Yes.
and they save. Okay. So that's what his name means. So this takes us to it uh, takes us to chapter 37. And at the beginning of chapter 37 is where we get this coat of many colors, right? This
Yeah, I
weird
love
thing
the coat
that
of many
pops up.
colors.
Isn't that great? I mean, they have a whole musical about it, which is a great,
Yeah.
great musical. You want to learn all about this? Watch that musical. The music is fantastic. It helps you learn all these things. Anyway, but what is this? What is this thing? Now, coat of many colors is a translation, right? It's English. Okay. In Hebrew, it says, this is in chapter Genesis 37, verse 3. It says, Now Israel, well, let me take a step back. In Genesis 37, verse 1, it says, And Jacob dwelt in the land of Canaan. It starts with Jacob. Now, oftentimes, when you get this interchange between when they use the name Jacob and when they use the name Israel, sometimes they do that on purpose to tell you this is something temporal, Jacob, he lived in the land of Canaan,
Hmm.
or something spiritual or ritual when they use the word Israel. Okay, so look out for that. So in chapter 3, it says, Now Israel, not Jacob. This tells me, this might be something spiritual. Okay.
Okay, good to
And
know.
Israel loved Yosef, it says, more than all his children. Now they're not saying that it doesn't say, and Israel did not love his other children. It doesn't say that. It just says that Yosef is the firstborn son of Rachel. Okay. And
Yeah.
remember Jacob and Rachel love story. Remember that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So
It's a beautiful story.
imagine Rachel's gone, and all you have
Yeah.
is her two sons, which probably looked just like her or reminded Joseph or
Right.
reminded Jacob of her. Remember that? So
Yeah.
it doesn't say he doesn't love his other sons. It just says he loves Yosef. Okay. And he loves Yosef. Uh, and then it says because he was the son of his old age, which means which means he's older now. Israel is older now. And Yosef was one of the last sons, right? So there's been a long time, a big generation gap between Reuben and Joseph, okay? And Benjamin is just a baby, right? He's just really young. And then it says, and he, meaning Israel, made him a coat. And in King James, it says in many colors. There's all kinds of translations. But if you notice in the King James, the word many is in italics, which means
Right.
words that are in italics mean they're not in the Hebrew text. The word many isn't in the Hebrew text. The word colors isn't even in the Hebrew text. It says katonet pasim. He made for Yosef a katonet pasim. Now, this word katonet we've heard before. Where did we hear this word katonet? A katonet is a kind of robe or sacred clothing.
Oh, like the skins in the garden?
Yes, it's the same word.
Okay.
Remember in the garden in chapter 3 of Genesis when it says, and Jehovah made for them katnot. It's the same word. Katnot or. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So it could be translated as garments or a robe or some kind of a holy coat. They say coat, but it's really a garment or a robe of some sort. Okay. And pasim is a weird word. Nobody really knows what it means. Um, and a lot of people think it means, sometimes this word pas means the bottom of your hands, right? The palms of your hands or your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So they think that it's a long robe, right? And then they think, well, maybe it's not long, it just has long threads or long stripes, and
Mm-hmm.
then they start thinking, well, maybe those threads are different colors, and then this whole tradition comes up, which isn't even there. It's not there. Okay. So and then you get a whole musical, the Technicolor
Based on
Dreamcoat,
it.
you know? But it means something like a holy garment that represents authority. Okay. So um
So would you say this is more similar to like we were talking about like the garments given in the garden?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
not necessarily the same, but it has more spiritual meaning than I think we give
Mhm.
it credit for.
I think so. Now, the Jewish rabbis in their writings and commentaries state that this katonet, which is the same word that you find in the garden, katnot, they say it is the same one. They say because these holy
Okay.
garments were made in the garden by the Lord, that they're eternal and they've been passed down. Okay.
Okay.
And then we see them pop up again with Noah. Remember that whole thing with Noah when he wasn't wearing his robe and his son took it? Remember
Right.
that? Sometimes they
Yes.
call it the stolen garment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it lands up in different places, and the rabbis say it went from Ham to one of his descendants, Nimrod, and then Nimrod into the hand of Esau. And then when Esau sells the birthright to Jacob, he's actually giving him the robe. And then remember in the tent, um, uh, Rebecca tells Jacob, put these special clothing on.
Right.
Okay. So there's a very ancient tradition that says this is actually a symbol for the authority and the inheritance and the presiding patriarch, that comes from the garden. Okay. So so there's a lot more to it. In the garden they say katnot or, which the rabbis say are garments of light. Then
Hmm.
if you think about it, if you pass light through a prism, what do you get?
Many colors.
Many colors, many colors. And then we saw this pop up in the covenant of Noah, this rainbow, right? Has to do with the
Right.
covenant, many colors having to do with light, having to do with the covenant. So this is obviously a sacred garment of authority, light, and holiness. So it's definitely something special because the brothers get jealous over it.
Yeah, they're upset.
They're upset that one of the youngest brothers now has this. Now you have to remember in one of the previous chapters at the very end, in chapter 36 at the very end, it says that Reuben, the oldest firstborn, violated and forfeited his right to be the birthright son. Okay. And therefore, the birthright and the inheritance would then go to the next son. Now, a lot of people think, oh, it would go to the next oldest one, who was Simeon. No, Simeon is a second born son. The birthright must go to a firstborn son. It would go to the firstborn son of the second wife, who just happens to be one of the youngest brothers, who is Joseph.
Yeah.
And this symbol of this sacred garment, robe of authority, is the sign that Israel is making Joseph his heir.
Okay.
Isn't that
That,
interesting?
yes, it is very interesting. Yeah, because in my mind, it's just this really pretty coat, you
Right.
know?
It is pretty because it's holy,
Right.
not because it has a lot of different colors on it. As a matter of fact, there are no colors, right? That's just that's a tradition that comes later on. Um, but you can see now why the brothers start to hate this young kid.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I'm the oldest in my family, and I have to say that I always thought my youngest sister was spoiled and favored by my parents, you know. I think that might be an older sibling thing. You just always think
Yeah,
that the younger ones are more spoiled than you. So, and
yeah,
this just adds to that for them.
right. Imagine you have 10 siblings older than you, including one sister, right? Way older than you, and they're all mad that the youngest one is going to be the heir.
Yeah, that's a
Okay?
lot of siblings to be upset with you.
That's correct, okay? I doubt his sister was upset with him, but the
Well,
brothers
she was
are.
never going to get the birthright, but the brothers will definitely be upset.
She was probably very nice. But the brothers, it says, are very mad. So let's just look at a couple things here. Let's walk through this. All right. So it says that the brothers saw that Joseph was favored by their father Israel, and they start to hate him, and they start to, teasing him and talking behind his back and things like that. He's just a kid, right? It says that he's
Yeah.
17,
Yeah,
you
he's
know?
young.
He's just a teenager, right? Really young. And then he has these dreams, right? And he starts to tell his brothers about his dreams. Hey, brothers, I had the weirdest dream last night. Imagine this young kid walks up to you, a teenager. Imagine a teenager walks up to you. Hey, I had this weird dream last night. There was these we were harvesting and we all harvested these sheaves of wheat and we stacked them all. There were 11 sheaves and there was one in the middle which was mine. And then these sheaves bowed down to my sheaf. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And so the brothers start, excuse me? Are you trying to tell us something?
Yeah,
You
they kind
know?
of catch on that maybe they're the chiefs that are bowing down and they don't
Okay,
like
yeah.
that.
They don't like that, right? They start thinking, "Are we the sheaves?" Is that what you're trying to say? Now,
Yeah,
now let me just
exactly.
touch on this first dream really quick. So, Rachel, when you think of sheaf, wheat, harvesting, what kind of things come to mind? Why would you harvest wheat? For what?
To make bread,
Yeah,
to feed your
that's
family.
correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. To feed your family, uh, to um, to take care of temporal needs.
Yes.
So this is
Yeah.
a temporal symbolic thing. Has to do with food,
Right.
okay? Which is temporal, which means the day will come when the need for food will bow down to Joseph's ability to have the food,
Yeah.
which happens.
And it happens.
It
Yeah.
happens. It happens. It's amazing. The second dream is a little bit different. Joseph says, I had another dream. It was really weird. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars all bowed down. He doesn't say to my star this time. He doesn't
Hmm.
say to my planet. He says the 11 stars, the sun, and the moon all bowed down to me. That's different. Now,
Right.
now let me ask you this, Rachel. Stars, sun, the moon, what are these symbols of? Where do we find these things?
Well, we find them in the creation.
Good.
Yep. We definitely find those in the creation. We find them when we talk about degrees of glory.
Yes, good. Good.
Um, yeah,
These are all heavenly
they're all celestial.
celestial symbols.
Right.
Yes. These are celestial symbols which have to do with things heavenly, are
Right.
bowing down to him. Now, it's not saying that Joseph is the savior,
Right.
but it is saying that he is a symbol for the savior. And he's a symbol for blessing the family of Israel and the earth and the creation and all of these um, creative bodies. It is saying that through him that they can be blessed with celestial blessings through Joseph. Okay. Now, this is going to connect us again to the very end in chapter 50. So spoiler alert, everybody. So if you haven't read the Bible yet, just plug your ears. Okay. But the brothers and
Pause
the
here, go
oh,
read.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Just
Go
kidding.
go read the rest of Genesis. The brothers, the father, bow down to him, and the brothers tell Joseph in chapter 50, brother, we're so sorry. Please don't take vengeance out on us when our father dies. And Joseph says something phenomenal that has to do with this dream. He says, brothers, I don't hold any ill feeling. Everything that happened was according to God's plan. He says, number one. Number two, to make sure that Israel would be saved alive, he says. So this is a beautiful way of showing not only the greatness of forgiveness and mercy, but also a great symbol, a type, and a shadow for the Savior Jesus Christ and
Yeah.
all of Israel and all of creation that he is the divine Savior for. So we need to be looking for that as we move through the Joseph narrative. We're going to see a lot of symbolic connections to the Savior Jesus Christ. Okay. All right. So we know the gist of the story. The brothers get mad, but something happens. Jacob, or let me see what it says. It says um it says it says in verse 13, we're in 37:13, it says, and Israel said, now again, that tells me, it doesn't say Jacob, it says Israel, which means I got to put my spiritual hat on. Okay. And it says, and Israel, this is verse 13, and Israel said to Joseph, do not thy brothers, aren't they up in the hills of Shechem with the flocks? He says, I will send you unto them. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And he said to him, Hineni, that word that Abraham said, that word that Isaac said, that word
Yeah.
that Jacob said. This is him saying, I am ready to do my duty in the spiritual sense. And then he says in verse 15, or he says in verse 14, and he said to him, go and find your brothers and bring me word of their well-being. And then verse 15, this is interesting. This just pops out of the middle of nowhere. And a certain man found him,
Yeah.
and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him a question. What seekest thou? Now, this is interesting because the next time we're going to hear this question, what seekest thou, is in John chapter 1, the first teaching of Jesus to his disciples is this question, what seek ye?
Hmm.
This is interesting. So I'm wondering, is the certain man a messenger? Is it the Savior? Is he trying to teach Joseph? Is he helping him, directing him? He tells him where the brothers are. It could be anyone. It says a certain man, right? But
Right.
the wording and the connection to Israel and what seekest thou is so interesting because we see it again in John chapter 1. Okay. Um, in Jesus's first teaching, what seekest thee ye, he says. Okay. Okay, so Joseph then goes off, he finds his brothers, okay? And the brothers plot to kill him.
Yeah, this seems to happen a lot in the scriptures for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. These brothers trying to kill this, and long story short, the brothers discuss it. One of the brothers takes Joseph and they put him in a pit. They take the robe. Looks like
Hmm.
he's wearing it or has it on him, and they take it and they shred it. They dip it in blood, remember? And
Yep.
they take it back to Israel, saying that he was killed. And then, did you notice we get two of the other sons of Abraham, Ishmael and Midian, who show up,
Yes.
and they take Joseph. The brothers sell him for the price of a slave, and they take him down into Egypt. Okay. Now, this pit is interesting. They throw Joseph into a pit. Remember that? And then they go
Yeah.
off and they have a meal and figure out what they're going to do with him, right? Now, it's interesting. Something that's interesting, again, a connection to Jesus. Last time I was in Jerusalem, and every time I go to Jerusalem, I take this pilgrimage from the Mount of Olives, the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives, to the Palace of Caiaphas, which is on the other side of the valley, and where they took Jesus on his first trial and scourging. And before they begin this trial of humiliation and beating, this is after the garden, so he's already covered in blood, is they throw him into a pit. And I remember being in this one of these pits in the basement of the or the dungeon of the palace of Caiaphas the high priest, and standing there thinking, because you stand in there, you look up, and it's the weirdest feeling to feel what it's like to be in that the pit. You feel helpless, right? And Joseph is now heading off to a foreign country as a slave.
Yeah.
But it says when we get to chapter 38, um, or when we get when Joseph goes down in Egypt, it says, then the Lord went with him. The Lord was with him. So the Lord Jehovah goes with Joseph to Egypt. And remember, you always go down to Egypt because it it's symbolic of leaving higher ground, holier ground, and going somewhere that is deep and dark. Okay. In chapter 38, we don't even hear about Joseph anymore. This is
Yeah.
where we're introduced to what Judah is doing.
Yeah, we kind of
Isn't that
almost have like
interesting?
a side story going on here.
We have a side story going on. It's kind of weird. It like kind of jumps out of nowhere in a different narrative about something completely different. Well, it's there on purpose. Chapter 38 is the opposite of chapter 37. It's there to contrast between Judah and Joseph. Okay. Um, and it's an interesting thing. Judah is separated from his brothers. He marries a Canaanite woman. He has three sons. Two of them, well, the firstborn son marries another Canaanite woman. Her name is Tamar. And
Mhm.
Tamar is married to Judah's firstborn son. He dies. So the second brother is supposed to marry her according to the law. Remember, the law of Moses isn't around yet. These are traditional laws that and customs that have been around for a long time. And so sometimes they call it levirate, right? And then
Mhm.
the second brother dies, and the third brother is too young to marry Tamar. So she has to wait, and Judah tells her, "Go home to your father and your mother, and then when the youngest son Shelah grows up, then I'll reach out to you, and then you can marry him." Okay. Well, Judah forgets, or he doesn't care. He doesn't care, doesn't he forgets. And then he he just forgets, and but it looks like he doesn't care. Okay. And his wife dies, and now he's just hanging out with his buddy, his Canaanite buddy Hira, right? And
Yeah.
and Tamar, years later, it's about 10 years later, she hears that Judah's in town. And so it says she takes off her mourning clothing. So we get all of these interesting contrasts with Joseph. There's about being separated from their brothers. There's about marrying certain women. There's about having sons that are righteous or not. There's about keeping the laws of God. There's about clothing. She takes off her mourning clothing and she puts on the clothing of a harlot, or at least they think that she is. She's not,
Right.
Tamara is not a harlot, but she's either disguised or she looks like one. Okay. And Judah sees her, and Judah is not making the same decision. She doesn't have as good decision making skills as Joseph does. Because remember,
Right.
Joseph, we're going to learn in the next chapter, resists temptation, right? He makes the
Yeah.
decision before it even happens. I am not going to sin against my God and do
Right.
this great sin, right? Judah just doesn't even think about it. And he um he uh, uh has a relationship with this woman who he thinks is a harlot, but it's Tamar. And
Right.
Tamar is really just trying to keep the commandment, right?
Right.
That she's entitled, and by command, or at least by this customary law, she is to be in the family of Judah, right? She's married into that family. And so Judah is going to pay her, and he gives her his signet ring, his staff, and his sash, which his signet ring, has his name on it, right?
Right.
And so she goes on her way, and he says, I'll send the payment over to your place, right? Anyway, um, word gets out that Tamar is pregnant. Remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember what Judah says when he hears that, when he finds out?
It's like, well, show me proof of who the father is.
Yeah, and
I want to know.
if it's true, remember
Yeah,
what
we're
he
gonna kill
said?
him.
Not only are we going to kill him, but what are we going to do to her?
Uh, what are we gonna do to her?
Burn her.
Oh, burn her. Yes.
You remember
Yes.
that? You
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, she's gonna get burned.
She's going to get burned. Okay. And so Tamar appears before Judah and says, the man who belongs to this signet ring with his name on it, and this staff and this sash is the father. And it says Judah. And Judah recognizes it. He says, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I bet he was wishing he could take back his statements about, killing the man and
that's right. That's right. And burning
burning Tamar.
Tamar. Okay. Because he is the one. And he says something interesting at that time. He says, Tamar is more righteous than me because she's striving to keep this command, and she is going to the extreme to do that. He says, and me, I don't even care about it.
Right.
And look at this predicament that I'm in. So she is more righteous than me. Now this he says burning of her. This is later codified in the law of Moses later on in Leviticus 21:9. It says in Leviticus 21:9, and the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the harlot, she profaneth her father, she shall be burned with fire. So, so this looks like a very ancient custom that was maintained and gets into the law of Moses, which comes much later. Okay, so we're starting to see glimpses of the precursors to the carnal law of
Hmm.
Moses. Okay, well, she should be forgiven according to the higher law. She should be forgiven, right?
Right.
If she repents. Anyway, they have two sons, right? Pharez and Zara. And these are the ancestors of Jesus.
Wow.
And in the genealogy of Jesus listed in the Gospels, Tamar is listed.
I
Isn't that
love that.
interesting? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So we have to be careful to judge Tamar. I don't think so. I think she is courageous. I think she is um, righteous. I think she is striving in an ancient culture to do what she feels is just and right. Judah is doing the opposite of what Joseph would do. So I
Yeah.
think chapter 38 is there to show us a contrast between Joseph and Judah. Okay?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right about that. And they are
Yeah,
definitely opposites in how they handle some of these situations.
that's right. Exactly. And so we're going to see in the next chapter Joseph going through the same thing but acting complete opposite. Okay? We're going to see, and this is some research that I'm working on right now, is this conflict or this struggle between Judah and Joseph that goes throughout the whole Bible, which is quite fascinating here. And this is the beginning of that struggle. So if we go to chapter 39, in chapter 39, Joseph is now in Egypt, and this is where he is now in the he's a servant which rises in the household of Potiphar. And Potiphar is the head of the jails in Egypt or something like that. And he has a wife and he's well off. And Joseph is his main guy in his household, right? Now we know the story about Potiphar's wife. Now, one thing I do want to
Hmm.
point out about Potiphar's wife, she's not just, flirting with Joseph. And she's not just, coming on to him, right?
Right.
The language in Hebrew of her words to Joseph, she is commanding him,
Mm,
and she's above him.
right.
And technically, she's his superior. He has to do what she says, but he says, because God is with him. And this is the chapter 39 where it keeps saying, and the Lord Jehovah was with Joseph. It says it multiple times. And Joseph trusts the Lord trusts Joseph, and they're making these decisions together. And even when the superior commands him to lie down with her, he defies that to keep the command of God. Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting?
The
The,
highest authority.
the highest authority,
Yeah.
and he knows it, and he flees from her. Okay. Well, we learned that Yosef is wrongly accused and thrown into prison. Okay. And there he runs into these people. People like Joseph, and he rises up there to the top prisoner. Everybody
Yeah.
everybody likes him. But look how he's being blessed. Now remember, when he's in the prison, the Lord is with him in the prison and
Yeah.
blessing him.
And he's choosing to continue to rise up,
Yeah.
even though he could just say, you know what, I give up. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the Lord's work anymore. I'm just gonna hang out
Right. Yeah.
and do what I want, and
Yeah.
that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
He
But I
could
think
choose that.
he could curse God. He could say, "Bohu, woe is me. Look at I'm in this horrible situation," which is natural. But because he has covenanted and he's constantly renewing this covenant relationship and this covenant confidence that he has with God, that he is with him, he will strive and he's willing to keep his commandments wherever he is and under any circumstances, that God will always be with him. We need to remember this as we renew these covenants every week in the sacrament. Okay. Go to church, friends. Okay. Here's a
Yeah.
plug. Here's a plug for going to church. Okay. Go to church, even if you're feeling like this is your circumstance. Go, because the Lord is with you, and you can covenant with him to show him that you trust and rely on his being with you to bless you while you are in these dire circumstances. Okay. All right. So Joseph runs into these two guys. One of them says the butler, right? And the baker sounds like,
And the
you know,
candlestick maker.
and the candlestick maker. It sounds like medieval Europe, right?
It's like a
But
nursery rhyme. That's what
I
I'm
know.
picturing.
But this butler, it really says in Hebrew, it says that he is a he it says he is the one who pours, meaning pours the wine. He is the trusted one who is trusted to hold the cup and pour the wine into the king's cup. Okay. He's probably the one who tests it before he hands it to
Yeah,
the
he probably
king,
has to, yeah,
you
make sure
know?
there's no poison.
Yeah. And for
Make sure it
some for
tastes
some
good.
reason, yeah, for some reason he's in prison. He did something that the king didn't like, and now he's in prison, but he's an important guy. And then you have this other guy who is a baker. And in Hebrew it does say that he is the baker of the food, right? So he's the head chef if you will,
Hmm.
the baker of the king's bread. Anyway, Joseph, they have these dreams again, and Joseph says he doesn't say, "Hey, I have dreams too, and I can interpret them." He's no, he says, "The Lord Jehovah is indeed the interpreter of dreams. Tell them to me, and I will tell you what they mean." But he gives all the credit to God first. Okay. He's so good. He's so good. Well, long story short, they get out. The cupbearer does, right?
Yeah.
The baker doesn't.
Yeah.
The baker's executed. And on the cupbearer's out 3 days, he's out of the prison. On his way out, Joseph says, "Hey, don't forget me.
Yeah.
Don't forget me." And
And of course he
what
does.
does he do? He forgets him, right?
Forget.
Until the king starts having a dream, right?
Yeah. And then it's
And
like, wait, I think I
oh
seem to
yeah,
remember somebody who can interpret dreams. Who
I
was that
remember
guy?
this guy. I remember this guy, right? All
Yeah.
of this is going to happen again in Babylon with Daniel and the king. It's going to happen all over again. Okay. But Daniel is from Judah. He's not from Joseph. Okay. But it's very similar type thing. So Joseph tells the king the interpretation of his dream. The Lord blesses him to tell him that. And the king makes him, the vizier of Egypt, right? The top guy, right? Under Egypt.
Yeah.
Now, something happens that's interesting in verse 40, 45. After Joseph is made ruler, he's given a new name. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. There we go with new
Joseph.
names again. I like it.
Yes, Joseph is given a new name by Pharaoh. It says in chapter 41, verse 44, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh." Now, when you get language like that, you know this is covenant language, all right? Now,
Right.
granted we're in Egypt, but Pharaoh is not only the king of Egypt, but he also thinks he's divine. I am Pharaoh. God always says that, right? And without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And then he says in verse 45, and Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath Paaneah, which that whole long word is definitely Egyptian. Okay. And folks have no idea how to translate this. They think, oh, maybe it's Hebrew or maybe it's Semitic or it's probably Egyptian. The I would say the best conclusion is it's probably Egyptian. And if it's Egyptian, then it means something like the God speaks and he lives. That's a great new name, isn't it?
That's a great name.
It's it's Egyptian, but it's a new name. Okay. And then, and he gave to wife, he gives Joseph a wife, Asenat, Asenat, who is the daughter of Potipharah. This isn't Potiphar. This is somebody
Hmm.
else. Potipharah, who is a priest of a place called On. It's also known as Heliopolis. Okay, the city of the sun. If her father is a priest, now we're going to see this later on with Moses, right?
Hmm.
Moses marries the daughter of a priest, right?
Right.
Here, Joseph marries the daughter of the priest, which means she's a priestess. Okay. So her name is Asenat. Okay. And Asenat is also an Egyptian name. Now let me just throw in just a short historical context here. Um, it, Historically, it looks like at this time of dating, it looks like this is one of these intermediate periods when the native Egyptians are not in power. This looks like a people who have come into Egypt have pushed out the native Egyptians, and these are Semitic people that historically we call Hyksos. Okay. So they've adopted the Egyptian culture and religion like the Greeks do, right? Later on. Later on, the Greeks do the same thing. You know
Right.
Cleopatra? Everybody
Yeah.
loves Cleopatra. They make
Yeah.
movies about her, and everybody, you think
Yeah.
you name one Egyptian, everyone says Cleopatra.
Right.
Well, she was Greek. She wasn't Egyptian. She just adopted all the culture and the rulership of Egypt. That's what's happening here at this time. It's 1,000 years
Gotcha.
before, but but you have this Semitic people. So this is why Joseph is able to rise up as second in command of Egypt. This is why Pharaoh wants him to do that. This is why the woman that he marries is not Egyptian. She is Semitic. She's a cousin, okay, Asenat. And they have two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay.
Yeah.
Manasseh's interesting. He's the firstborn. His name means something like the one who forgets. Isn't that
Hmm.
interesting?
Yeah.
Now, there's a connection to the Book of Mormon with that. The one who forgets, which forgetting is the opposite of remembering. This is why it's
Right.
important to remember.
Right.
And remember the Book of Mormon, the title page that Moroni writes? It says,
Yeah.
it says that the descendants of Lehi, the Lamanites who are Manasseites, will
Hmm.
remember the covenants in which God has made with his people. Okay.
I love that.
Okay. So
Many of our,
remembering is a struggle sometimes for
yeah.
Manasseites
Well, and many of us native peoples are from the tribe of
from
Manasseh.
Manasseh.
Yeah.
Yes. And many of us have forgotten. Okay.
Yes.
So we have to work extra hard to remember these things. And that's one of the purposes of the Book of Mormon, written to the Lamanites, that they will remember the great things the Lord has done for his people and remember the covenants which he has made with them, right? So that's
Yeah.
important. The second son, Ephraim, means means the fruitful one, the fruitful one, the one who will bring forth fruit. Okay, the fruitful
Yeah.
one. And Ephraim, we're going to learn later on, will be the birthright son to Joseph. Okay. And so his descendants are responsible for the gathering. Okay. As a matter of fact, all the children of Joseph are, but Ephraim specifically. And
Right.
the Lord says something um, about Ephraim in the restoration. In the Doctrine and Covenants, the Lord reveals it is not in the blood of Ephraim to be rebellious.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting?
That is very
So
interesting.
why do you have so many Ephraimites in the church coming to Christ and his church? Why? Because it's not in their nature to be rebellious. They hear, they feel, they obey,
Yeah.
and they gather. Okay. So that is what these chapters are about. Okay. It's setting the stage for the rest of the Bible.
Yeah. That's really good. I mean, and these are, you know, Ephraim and Manasseh are tribes we talk about all the time
All the time.
now.
Yes.
So this is really
So here they
important to
are.
know.
This is it.
Yeah.
Chapter 41
Yeah.
is where we meet the family of Joseph. And we have to remember that sister Joseph, Asenat, their mother, these boys are great, and Joseph is great because their mother is great. Asenat.
Yeah.
We can't forget her, that she is the great mother of Ephraim and Manasseh, the great wife of Joseph, the priestess, if you will. So if Joseph is a prince of Egypt, if he's a priest in the patriarchal priesthood, right, of
Hmm.
Israel, He has the symbol of it and says that he is, and all Israel bows down to him. And remember his celestial dream.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're going to bow down to him because he's the one blessing them. Okay,
Right.
if he's a priest, and then and his wife Asenat is a priestess, then this is a holy family, and they are going to be blessed. And later on, as we get into chapters 48 and 49, we're going to see the patriarchal blessings of them. And we're going to see what their future, what their legacy, what their mission really is all about. And it still continues to this day.
Yeah,
And
I love
we are
that.
part of it. So
Yeah.
exciting.
I can't wait to get into that because I feel like, when we get our patriarchal blessings and we learn our tribes, it's so important to understand what the blessings are.
Yes. Yeah.
And, because we have a birthright,
Hmm. Hmm.
from our lineage. And so it's important
Hmm.
to know what that is.
Hmm. And we're going to
So,
see that Israel is going to bless his whole family and give them patriarchal blessings before he dies. In our next time we see that. So we'll spend some time looking at that. But I love these chapters. I love the narrative of Joseph. It doesn't stop here. It keeps going throughout the Bible. And so we'll keep pointing towards that, but these are the chapters that do it. So I'm so thankful that I am a lineal descendant of Joseph, and that I can participate and try to live up to his example as he trusted the Lord, and to covenant each week that to do, willing to keep the commandments of God and trust God and always remember him, right? And
yeah.
that his spirit will always be with me like it was with Joseph. So I'm so thankful for that great blessing in my life and my family's life.
Thank you. Me too. I'm grateful for that blessing as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again this week. We are so grateful for everybody who watches and listens. This was, again, a great discussion. I've learned a lot, and I hope you all did too. We invite you to join us again next week by watching on the Gathering of Tribes YouTube channel or by joining us on your favorite audio podcast platform. To learn more about the mission of Gathering of Tribes, you can visit our website at www.gatheringoftribes.org. If you have a question, please leave that in the comments on YouTube, or you can email me your questions at rachel@gatheringoftribes.org. That's RACHEL at gatheringoftribes.org, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. We love questions. We love to be able to answer that and to help us all learn and grow together. So please, if you have a question, even if you think it seems small, ask the question. We would love to have that. If you find this podcast uplifting, please share it with your friends and family, or take a moment to write a review. Positive positive reviews not only uplift us, but they also help others find our podcast. Thank you for joining us. May your path be peaceful and enlightening this week.